Apple's headset could be their avenue into new-ish markets, but not for the same reasons you're thinking. Apple's announcement of the AR VR headset was initially met by this author with a feeling that it was going to be a giant dub. And it's fair to state up front, I'm absolutely not an Apple fanboy. That said, I am an investor in the company because they seem to have the Midas touch. Forget about the free cash flow, the market cap, the loyal fans, etc., etc., etc. But I think Apple may have a transformational play on their hands here. Maybe not for the reasons most consumer tech lovers are thinking. And in the spirit of full transparency, this author has an indirect investment in Apple from a concentrated mega cap tech adjacent ETF as well as an index fund ownership play. But I recently sold a very small direct position in Apple. Now, I would posit the following thesis as a potential reason that Apple is building an AR VR platform now and how it relates to Apple's future, i.e., the question, why now, Apple? I believe that Tim Cook and crew may be smarter than we think, which I wouldn't have said a few months ago. And paired with running out of ways to spend money and a market size that's beginning to be capped on growth rates on their historical product mix, they're probably looking to move into other ancillary markets in a bigger way. I believe that they're strategically trying to enter the content market more heavily while also moving into the increasingly valuable business training market. And they have the infrastructure in place to do just that with the App Store, the digital assets, their developer ties, brand recognition, etc. In an era when the biggest companies are going to get even bigger and they all have an increasingly larger percentage of free cash flow, they're pressed to be embracing AI and other innovative technologies. Apple's pretty well positioned to be selling $3,000 to $5,000 headsets to businesses looking to better train employees. I could see Accenture, let's say, a 700,000 employee company, already poised above the signing line probably for an early adoption contract of thousands of headsets to train high value employees on their increasingly important internal training programs. I could see companies like Walmart using these types of headsets to train store managers and assistant managers on loss prevention tooling, and maybe even making a $50,000 plus per store purchase to do the same thing for normal employees. I can see VR, AR being adopted by top medical schools to help train doctors and surgeons on integration of robotic tooling and procedures. As I edit this, Apple and Disney have already announced a partnership on content delivery from the Disney Plus brand. I could see Disney offering an AR VR enhanced journey through their physical spaces or offering one-off journeys through their brand assets and worlds for families and hardcore Disney fanatics to experience their brand in different novel ways. That's a 50K plus unit order for Apple and a revenue enhancement for Disney in their physical parks and on the couches of a lot of living rooms. I can see people gaming on them, sure, but gamers have a price pain threshold that isn't quite squaring with the idea of a $3,000 to $5,000 all-in price for this new Apple headset. The meta realm is all about business, I think, until the price to develop and maintain such a space comes down from the current lofty cost structures. Sure, Sony and Meta are going to develop games in an AR, VR space, but the killer app for Apple might be catering to a business market that they tried to, in a somewhat lackadaisical way, to enter in the 1990s. Personal and business computing was dominated by other players at the time. And now with the M2 chips and the strategic agreements with semiconductor machinery makers like ASML, the Dutch heavyweight, means that Apple Silicon is going to play a big part in their future. The improvements in computing capabilities from Apple and their roadmap to the M1 and M2 and beyond isn't really to challenge Intel or to save a few bucks. It's to be in business categories more competitively at the very top level of compute. Here's where it gets maybe a little bit weird for some listeners or readers. I can see companies looking to Apple to spend advertising in the real world where meta playgrounds could cater almost subliminally to actual decision makers. A combination of developers, their digital app store, and their major agreements for distribution with pop culture and high tech firms means that Apple may be even better positioned to take advantage of passive advertising in spaces where real market leaders and business people will be training, playing, developing, and doing a larger and larger percentage of their workflow in the next 5 to 15 years. While that's the least interesting play from a revenue perspective today, it is likely to be the next frontier for interactive and programmatic advertising. Marketers are going to lose a lot of ground with the changes in AI fundamentally altering how people get and spread information. I'm more bearish about the future of Google Ads and SEO than I am about the future of Apple as a leader in delivering strategic advertising to real decision makers that are dabbling in new, innovative workspaces in the meta universe. Which, if you had asked me 5 months ago, would have been a laughable concept in my mind. Don't get me wrong, Google's not going to suddenly be rendered into a state of poverty because Meta builds a game world or ChatGPT's taken a bit of the informational content search market. But traditional advertising is forgettable. It's easy to ignore in its current iteration, and businesses want to be able to target the highest level or the lowest level of sales funnel decision maker as we possibly can with the right passive brand building advertisement. We want them to recognize our brands by name and subliminally build credibility in them and sell themselves on the transaction in their own minds. So what does this look like? Probably something like this. A doctor in school, 1 year away from graduation, is doing surgery practice on a $3,000 headset using innovative software based on a student license at a reduced cost, right? Because school is expensive. And in turn, the company that provides the discount and the software gets to partner with advertisers from companies that are looking to sell to doctors that open new practices or land high-paying and highly important places, high-paying jobs in highly important places in big medical institutions, hospitals. So you're going to see Viagra and Lipitor, and it's likely to be far more strategic than that. Maybe Dupixent on a dermatologist AR/VR space, or Boston Scientific catheters for training a charge nurse on the wall of a hospital room. I think others are going to be looking at billboards on the side of the operating room, for example, in AR and VR, and that's going to be a space that they move into. For the next year, a passive acknowledgement of those brands that are in the periphery of that doctor, right? So you're seeing brand names you wouldn't normally see, and they're in a place where you're getting comfortable with technology that you're going to be using as a practicing doctor going forward. Sure, it's a long-term game, but the data collected puts salespeople directly in connection with these doctors about the land positions at hospitals, or nursing staff, or even the office controller, to help them make setting presentation meetings easier. Some of these doctors are going to go into the private practice, and some of them are going to be the most talented, brightest stars in a ridiculously lucrative field. It's an interesting set of eyes to an advertiser. Medical staff turnover, as an ancillary, will bring their historical workflows with them. So as they leave from one position to another, they're going to go to these different offices or hospitals, and they're going to spread that adoption. So how else can I imagine this? How about a mainstream consultant, business consultant, paying a larger consultancy to get access to their data, say from Accenture. Accenture offers a $200 million program that they built to train its own people on high-tech adoption or digital literacy or PR in the age of difficult marketing. They recoup their development money by selling public-facing programs in an immersive environment to high-level consultants who may not have the ability in the long term to service bigger clients. They may then be able to partner to take some of that business, but being a solutions provider to those independent, unrelated consultants at the same time. Both parties benefit. The bigger beneficiary, sure, probably the company like Accenture, and they control how much of their proprietary data gets moved out into the public marketplace. It's a win-win for them. It's a catalyst to produce content. It's a new growth area for a larger consultancy that has a small cost to develop and offers a big profit margin at maturity. It's an avenue into more of the small and medium business consulting space that they never had before because of their initial price points. It's a symbiotic relationship that helps all variables interact in a way that improves total profit percentages from all participants' perspectives. So here, now we're back to the initial point of this commentary. Apple's likely to be pushing more aggressively into the content arena, the business markets, and they're well positioned to be one of the biggest advertising platforms in the future, possibly leapfrogging the mega companies already in the space like Facebook and Google. Such a combination of the infrastructure they already have, the control levels they already employ, and the potential to sell through at a much more capital insensitive market than Meta, let's say, is currently marketing to. It means that Apple is going to be a strong contender for market share ownership in multiple growth areas that it only has dabbled in historically. So how does this play out? Okay, well, you get as many developer units into the market as possible. You offset those costs for now, while you get the cost of production down. You gauge the interest in the broader market, sure, but you send your salespeople into the biggest employers by employee population and into the biggest research institutions and the brain trusts of the world, including important non-governmental organizations in tech and medical training An educational institution, that's the long play. The intermediate play is developing an advertising platform that intuitively sends people through a funnel of reinforcement for premium payer brands, so they're front of mind in the periphery of decision makers who will naturally gravitate to the innovation of an Apple branded, Apple built headset. The advertising and content play here is massive. It will translate across business platforms into the consumer market in some form or fashion. The short term play, though, is to sign exclusive agreements to develop premium programs for big companies in targeted training to sell headsets and recoup the initial cost of the development by Apple. This will allow a lot of viral content to be leveraged to sell more to the middle market and the large companies a training tool. Uh, a well placed consultant, let's say, as a partner. Again, the obvious types of players are the Accentures of the world, and a tech partner that can help provide the coding and content aspects. Apple has a ton of these. They have a whole stable of these companies in their ecosystem already. This means that Apple sells a lot of these units to a lot of different companies. It's no wonder they've got a 900,000 unit prediction on sell through. Companies can absorb the total cost of using this technology, whereas Meta has struggled to make this go mainstream because it's pushed the direct consumer market and it's trying to own the entire delivery system. Apple doesn't need to own the spaces. They just need to deliver the content from content producers already on a platform where the content producer can thrive, a la their current app store. They can own the hardware market after the developers build the actual killer apps. It's ridiculous to think that Apple's simply throwing away money here without having a better master plan, let's say. But if I'm wrong, what else do you do when you have so much cash laying around like Apple does? Let's just see how it plays out. Oh, and by the way, if I'm right, Apple, call me. I'm available as a consultant if you want to know how to make this work.